Today, of course, marks the first day of June, which marks the first day of hurricane season. The season begins on June 1st and ends November 30th. So we have John Rizzo from NOAA Weather here with us today to give us their forecast for the 2012
Good morning, John. Season. Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
Yes, John, thank you so much for being on the show. Okay, John, now there's already been 2 tropical storms named. Does this mean that we're going to have an active season?
No, it really doesn't. While it is unusual to have 2 named storms before the beginning of the official hurricane season, actually there's really no relation to how the rest of the season plays out. So the analogy would be, it's a stellar pregame show, but it doesn't mean that the game is necessarily going to have a lot of action.
Well, that's good news.
And what does the forecast have in store for us? I think you indicated that we do have a forecast now for the hurricane season?
I guess last week, NOAA and the Climate Prediction Center issued the official hurricane season forecast, and they're going that it's most likely that we'd see between 9 and 15 named storms. And that is more or less an average season now. And what that season doesn't tell you is where these storms actually end up. It's just a numbers game, and we think that anywhere from 1 to 3 of them may actually reach Category 3 strength sometime in their lifetime.
Now, some years they seem to form way down there in the Caribbean. Some years they come off of Africa and then go up the East Coast, and then some years they're down there in the Yucatan Peninsula. I mean, is there any way we can know where they're going to be this coming season, or?
Not exactly, but because the numbers are actually down from the previous, few hurricane seasons. We've actually forecasted active seasons the last few years, and now it's normal. So what's different this year? Actually, one of the factors is actually the sea surface temperatures in the Atlantic, and we think they're going to be cooler than they have been in previous years. So that means
cooler seas, everybody. Yeah.
Not necessarily around the Keys, but the places where they form and come off of Africa, and that's a factor. Number 2 is we think that after being in a La Nina global weather pattern for the last couple of years, and that meant the waters were cooler than the normal off of Mexico, and that means less wind shear to tear the hurricanes apart in the Atlantic. Now we're going into possibly an El Nino this winter, which means more wind shear, especially late in the season, which means some of the storms may not have a chance to fully develop.
That means they'll blow off, right, and stay out there in the Atlantic?
So there's a little more good news than we've seen before. But again, it has nothing to say about where the storms track patterns, because we just don't know this far in advance where that storm track will be.
How accurate are your forecast predictions, John?
Well, and speaking as a scientist, that 9 to 15 is actually a 70% confidence interval. So it means there's a 70% chance that the number of storms will fall in that number. So yes, it's going to be more or less accurate. But seasons that are very busy, like 2005, we base a lot of climate prediction on statistical analysis. In other words, is there something about this year that looks like another year? When it comes to record-breaking seasons, whether they be very quiet or very active, it can be very difficult because if it hasn't happened before, we have nothing to go by that can really predict a record season.
Wow.
Now, one thing I think that people really watch with the hurricanes is the cones. Now, is the technology getting such that we can narrow the cones any or refine the cones any, or how's that going?
Yes, the cone does get narrower as we go by each year. The cone is actually made up of an analysis of the last 5 years of hurricane seasons and the performance by the National Hurricane Center. And as each year goes by, that cone gets a little bit narrower. Just keep in mind that the effects of a hurricane can extend well outside of that center. They can go for hundreds of miles. So just because the cone is narrower doesn't mean you get brushed by or affected in some way by the storm. What area that we haven't done so well in, of course, is intensity. And that's predicting, especially when storms and hurricanes rapidly intensify. And what I mean by that is they jump from a Category 1 to a 4 in a daytime. And that is an area that still eludes us in the science.
Wow, okay. And now, John, I know you guys have some new improvements going on over at NOAA Weather. Could you tell us about them?
Yes, so one thing in January we did this year is we did a major upgrade to our Doppler radar system. And that's located right on Boca Chica Key on the north side of the island. And we're using dual polarization technology now. And dual polarization allows us to actually look inside the clouds in storms and actually see what's inside. Not just that there's a lot of stuff up there, but is it ice, or is it water drops, or is it a bird, chaff, things like that, that are not necessarily rainfall. And this leads to improvements in predicting how much rain is falling from these thunderstorms. And that's probably our #1 benefit in that. It is actually predicted across the country after these radars are all upgraded across the country that we're almost a $700 million a year benefit, because it means better rainfall predictions from storms, better river forecasts. And if we can get river flooding a lot more accurate, then you're saving property potential as well as lives down the road.
Wow.
And the new Doppler will help
great.
you hone in on this?
Yes, the upgrade is already complete. There's other benefits too, like to aviation, where icing levels, when you think about airplanes flying, and even down here in the warm tropics, there's a level at which you have ice up there, and that way airplanes can find better routes and better altitudes to fly, and so there's a safety factor that's built in. It's definitely a good thing.
Well, I went up with Freddie Cabanas recently, and it's a open cockpit plane, and I noticed at a certain level it really got cold up there. I mean, and this is just right above the Keys. I mean,
Really?
but when you go up, it's not too far before it gets cold.
That's true, and of course all of our information can be available on our Facebook page as well. Just look for National Weather Service Key West on our Facebook page, and in the coming weeks we're actually going to be on Twitter now too.
Oh, great. Okay, so everybody out there can get updates from NOAA weather on Twitter, on your Twitter page, right?
You
Yes,
gotta
probably
tweet
in a
the
few
weather.
weeks.
How
But
about
Facebook
that?
we're on right now.
Facebook, and of
Good.
course check out the website, NOAA.gov.
Yes.
Okay, John, thank you so much for giving an update
Yes,
on
thank
this
you so
hurricane
much
season.
for joining us this morning.
Great
So have
having
a
you.
safe season.
Thank you. All right, everybody, we're going to take a quick break, but we'll be right back after these messages.